Welcome to the Built on Air podcast. Today's edition. We're glad you could be with us. We have a great show for you today. I am Dan Fellers, one of your hosts for today. We also have Camille back with us. Hello, Camille.
Hello.
And also Ali joining us again. Glad you could be here. So today, as always, it's a live variety show for all things Airtable. We'll go through 4 different segments and talk about different ways that you can use Airtable in your business and in your life to do things more efficiently and effective. So as always, we're going to begin the show talking about what's going on in the Airtable communities, what's new, any new announcements, any interesting topics of discussion. And we're going to do things a little bit differently. Instead of going through each community, we went through beforehand and are keeping a list. If you remember, if you watched last week's episode, we talked about the Web Clipper app. And after that episode, I started thinking, why aren't we using that with our show? So I started using the Web Clipper to pull interesting links to the communities of topics that are worth talking about on this show. So now that we have our base of links, we're going to go through those and see what's new. So in the Airtable community, I assume both you saw this. So now a new source sync coming on is the the Google Drive external source sync. So if you're familiar with Airtable in the last couple of months is getting into syncing their data from different platforms. And so they already had Box,
Calendar,
Google Calendar, Salesforce.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Any others?
There's one more, and I've forgotten what it is.
So there's one more out there. Jira was that on there?
Yeah. Oh, yeah, Jira, yeah.
Okay, so now they have Google Drive, so you can sync all of your folders and kind of create a table of your Drive files. So that will be very useful in managing your Google Drive environment. I think it's still in beta, so you have to apply for the beta to get access to it. So there's the link there in there. So that is a good announcement. And that will actually be a theme for today. We're going to talk a lot about Google and Google Drive integration coming up as well. So that's exciting to see. The next one was the Formula Playground. Did you see this comment or this?
I saw that it exists. I didn't actually install it. I think it's a base on the universe that they made.
Yeah. So if we go to it, let's take a look at it. Sure. So yeah, I guess you have to install it. They don't have the version you can play with it. So yeah, it basically looks like they've got every formula and just kind of map out how you would use it with some examples. So useful for getting to understand the formulas. I was hoping it would be like an actual playground that you could actually test the functions and like a better editor for the functions. But not the case. I mean, you can play with it within Airtable like normal, but it's not anything different. So,
but it looks like the other tables are, probably just examples of some of each of these formulas categorized. Text function examples, like it probably would have examples of substitute and left, maybe.
Yeah.
The tables up at the top.
Right. So they've got the common errors. This is useful. These show up when you're dealing with formulas. So yeah, so there's more examples. So they have examples of the different types. But this is good because, some of these things people aren't aware of, how to put like a /n. I actually saw some questions about that this week, and how you can use that instead of the concatenate function. So very useful if you're just learning about formulas. I think this is a great resource to dig into it. Yeah. All right. Let's move on to the next one. In the Built on Air community. So Built on Air has a Slack community where lots of discussion going on. And you can see, this didn't go straight to where I wanted it to. I guess it's over here. So a lot of questions around, actually, this isn't what I wanted. I believe in here is where I wanted to go. Yeah, so a common one about forms, being able to update existing records from a form. So you can't do that in Typeform. You can't do that in Jotform unless you're using the Onto Air plugin. You can do it with mini extensions. You can't do it with Airtable forms. So you typically need some other tool like Integromat or Zapier to perform the update. Mini extension does it directly. Onto Air will be doing it directly in the next month or two. Right now it does it through Jotform. So that's a common question that people get. And the other one that I was going to bring up in here was actually a question that I put out there. I don't know are you guys seeing, do you use a lot of automations that are timing out lately?
Not late.
I don't use enough to notice timeout issues.
Yeah.
I have had a couple that have timed out. But I've solved it by kind of doing some hacky stuff with segmenting out only the records I need to look through on a particular view and then having the automation look at those. I'm talking about a script step in an automation, not necessarily just the right. Yeah,
that's true. I should clarify it's happening within a script, within an automation. Yeah, it seemed like for ours, I'm getting it pretty frequently now. For a while we were getting them months ago, and then things seem to improve, but now they seem to be creeping back. I actually got another one this morning, and so it requires you to go in and rerun it, unless you set up so you have another automation in case it fails, so a fallback automation. Yeah, so that's definitely one way to work around it. So yeah, so if you're seeing that within automations, it's not just you. You can just rerun the history. But yeah, I think it's only within the scripting, because I think they have a 30-second window when that script needs to execute, and sometimes their API is not always responsive. And I see this not just within automations and scripting, but if you're using the REST API, sometimes their REST API can take a long time. So I think they're probably related issues.
I actually had a Zapier error recently that was very similar. It was basically timeout.
Yep. Yeah, so Zapier has a 30-second window as well, I believe.
I think so.
And so yeah, and it typically is related to the Airtable API. All right. Any other thing you guys have seen in either Airtable or Built on Air communities before we move on? Okay, moving on to Reddit. So Reddit's another good place to ask your questions. This one I thought was interesting. Somebody coming from FileMaker. We should have Scott come on and answer this one, but just kind of, and we saw this in a similar question actually in Built on Air, and it basically it boils down to like being able to have records be aware of other records. And you can't really do that without a script, right? Like in Excel or Google Sheets, you have the ability to reference other rows or other, cells. In Airtable, you can't really reference, another record unless it's linked to it. So it does make things challenging, like the ability to figure out which one is the lowest number so that you can then, increment by one. And you can't really do that with a formula. You'd have to kind of use a script that goes through and loops through to figure out which one's the lowest. And then you can then use that value, right? Any other tricks on how you kind of get around those types of limitations?
I wrote a couple variations of an automation script that would number records throughout a base in lieu of an auto number field, which is, there's only one set of numbers, 1 through infinity. Auto numbering by like week or by year. So it would recount at the start of the next week or the next year or something. And this is kind of similar. There was another one I wrote that ranked items by like, you had the most points, so you're ranked number 1, you ranked number 2 because you had the second most number of points. And so, I mean, my answer is usually to write a script and tie it to an automation that watches a particular record that would affect the order of the numbering. But I don't know how convenient that is. And, if you have a bunch of different records going back and forth, you're going to eat up a lot of automations to have it run.
Yeah.
So maybe you don't want it tied to an automation.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, there's some workarounds, but I think, if you're used to kind of the ability to do that in Excel, or it looks like FileMaker, you could do something similar. That will definitely be something you have to learn a little bit differently on how to do that.
Yeah, I think another trick might be, I'm just trying to like read quickly what they actually wrote, but something I'll do sometimes is I'll have, a summary table with every record linked to it. So just one record on a table, and then roll up to get the max value.
Mm-hmm.
And then if you need to get the second lowest, you can substitute with whatever. And then that whenever you're trying to add a record and link to the record that came before it, you can just reference whatever's on that junction table as the number. It sounds complicated, but it's hard to do.
The old Van Hall, right?
Yeah.
That was one of the aces up his sleeve, I remember.
Yeah, he definitely had a knack for doing that. So, all right, let's move on to Facebook. Facebook has an Airtable community. And my browser's frozen on me. There we go. And so this one is talking about CSV files. So pulling in a CSV file and processing it. Ali, I think you responded to this one, if you remember what's going on. So basically looking for how to map your CSV file. And actually, I think it's kind of some of the similar things about there's some kind of lookup required to figure out like the date to figure out which one's the current one.
Exactly. Yeah, I think the way I read this and the reason I replied to it, I think if they just turned those two fields into like a linked record field and used another table, then they'd be able to quickly see what the most recent or the highest filing ID was for each company.
Yep. That would be my solution. If you're importing a CSV, you can import directly into a link to another record field type. And, it looks like if you're going to have the same company name more than once, it might even behoove them to have a separate table anyway. And we covered on a previous episode for the audience how to use link to another record field types to find not just the highest number, but the name of the record with the highest number. I believe it was episode 1 through 4. One of those episodes. You're just going to have to watch them all.
Yeah, so that can be tricky, and again, likely uses some script somewhere in there to process that. Onto Air, our functions does do imports where you could automate importing from a CSV file, and has the ability to do updates or inserts depending on a matching field. So there's some basic logic that could potentially help in doing upwards and allow it to be automated. So it might be worth checking out onto Air functions. All right, here's another common one, backup solutions. I get this a lot. This also plugged ours, so thank you, Nick, for plugging onto Air backups. There are other solutions out there. There actually is another one that takes a very different approach. Pro-base, Pro-Air backup, something like that. And that one kind of pulls it from your client, so you can actually extract more information than what we do. We go strictly through the API. They take a different approach, but there are backup solutions out there. The bigger question that came up out of this was, why do you need a backup if Airtable is already backing up? Airtable has archives. And the main reason that why we built our backup solution and why our customers use it is kind of an insurance policy. If anything were ever to happen to Airtable, some companies require it to be outside of the primary source. So there are business reasons for having it outside. Now, if you were to make a mistake and you needed to recover, then using Airtable's archives is the preferred way to do it. I don't believe any of these backup solutions, ours included, have a restore option. Maybe the Pro one does have a restore, but restoring is actually pretty difficult because you can't automate creating the full base through any kind of means. So backups, there are solutions out there. There's 2 or 3 to check out. And there it is. Yeah, Pro Backup. So somebody did mention it. .io is a good one as well. So Carbonite is like a generic backup solution, and I don't think they have a direct connection to Airtable. So you'd have to manually download your CSVs, and then you could back it up anywhere, obviously. So different approach there for backups.
Just one more thing about backups. Airtable will automatically take snapshots for you, and you can manually take a snapshot, but they limit how frequently you can manually take a snapshot. So if you might accidentally back something up and realize, oh wait, there's one more new important change. Let me make sure I get this version saved, and then you might not be able to have that choice. But with these other solutions that were listed, including onto Air backups, you can manually do it anytime you please, if I'm correct.
Yep. Mm-hmm. Yeah, and automate as well. Yeah. So yeah, and then the other plug, if you're tracking changes to your schema, so Ontair also has an Ontair schema that helps you track changes to the structure of your base, not the data itself, but how your structure and fields change over time. So that's another form of backups.
That is huge. Do either one of you guys know, or have you been able to deduce the schedule at which Airtable decides to take snapshots? I can't figure out if it's after a certain percentage of changes have been made, or just it's weird. Sometimes it'll be 3 months ago was the last one, and then 5 minutes ago was I don't even. Just wondering.
And not a clue. I very rarely need to back something up that's so substantial that I couldn't just go into the trash and find my deleted record or the deleted table. It would have to be some like crazy series of new changes I had made for me to have to back it up. And I've noticed that too, that it doesn't seem to have like a regular schedule of when things are backed up.
Right.
Some bases aren't updated as frequently as others. I don't know if it's metered by, like you said, by like percent of changes. It doesn't seem to be like every day or every week, although I could be wrong. It just didn't seem like that was the case.
Yeah, I have no idea. I have not looked into that at all. It's going to show Garrett watching the show. He mentions he uses Google Apps scripts. This might be a Bill dupe. I'm just kidding. No, Bill French, also very big on Google. And so, so if you know how to code, you could obviously write a script that pushes the data out to somewhere on a nightly basis. So another way to do that as well. So definitely useful, Garrett. Appreciate that. All right, let's move on. Next one on Facebook. Move over. Another one that definitely seems to come up, the dreaded formatting of numbers. So if you've ever worked with Airtable, I wonder if they will ever address this.
They should. I really don't understand why they don't have it. Like,
yeah. I have made very few in all of my years in Airtable and the community forums. I have made very few feature requests, and one of them was a dang currency function. It seems so simple.
Well, not only that, but like for both currency and numbers, like this one right here, as far as the random numbers, have you ever seen where if you show enough decimal places, you'll get it's not exactly 1500.4. There's some other number, and it really messes up your math calculations. And I've run into this so many times, and you'll have some kind of calculation, and it's not what it should be because of these trailing decimal values, and you don't see it unless you show enough decimal places. And so Airtable has a floating number issue under the hood. So Julie, I feel your pain. It is frustrating. I've dealt with it. I came up with one time a formula that it was actually really hard to like knock this off, because you have to convert it to a string, parse it, and then put it back as a number value. Mm-hmm. And it was not easy to do. Ontaire solves this now with our functions. We do have the ability to better format numbers. It does require, a task, so it would eat into usage there to do it on a lot of bases, but definitely a way to overcome that and be able to format it in any currency or any number formatting that you would want. Very frustrating to deal with. Just good to be aware of it. And you do notice it with, like, they notice it in Softar.io. I've noticed it in Stacker, where you can display it in Airtable. Airtable has the ability to format a number how you'd want it, but if you're using that number via the API, it's not formatted the way that you set it up in Airtable. So it's really frustrating if you're using that number outside of Airtable, and if they don't have some way of formatting it, it will show up as a really long decimal value or something. Mm-hmm. So something to be aware of. There are some funky workarounds, but just know that it's not you. It's not something that you've got wrong in your formula.
I was really hoping that something with the new regex or rejects, I don't know, there's an ongoing debate on how to pronounce that. Right? I have no idea.
I say regex.
I say regex.
Yeah, I was hoping that like they're like one of those formulas would be able to do something like that, because with some regular expressions you can format currencies, correct?
Yes.
Yeah, they should just add that.
Yeah, that would be useful. All right, let's move on to Twitter. So Twitter is a good place to learn about new products coming out. So this one I thought was interesting. So Jotform, this came from a post from Jotform. So if you're a Jotform Airtable user, so they're launching a new pre-fill, which my understanding is basically the ability to it will allow you to pull a record like from Airtable or Google Sheets or they have their own tables product. And then it'll pre-fill a form based off of that record. So that's kind of a cool feature that's coming out within Jotform. That might be worth checking out. Found that on Twitter. This was somebody mentioning, I wondered if either of you had seen this, where I actually haven't seen this in any of my bases, where they have you gone through it, Ali?
I got the pop-up, but I was busy at the moment, and I just closed the X. And
Ali,
I know. I was like literally just about to hop on a call, and then I couldn't find it after. And I was like, I really would have liked to go through that, but I'm gonna see if I can maybe find it in my notifications.
Have you gone through it, Camille?
No, man. I'm a UI junkie, and I'm by no means an expert, but that's the kind of one thing Airtable has, not the one thing, but one of the things Airtable has going for it is it's just generally speaking a pretty good UI, and there's some tweaks that could be made to make things easier or, more clear and yada yada. And I think I want to do this exercise. Airtable.
Yeah.
Come on now.
Come on.
Yeah, I think it's cool. And he points out, the co-designing. I think Airtable puts a lot of effort into trying to work with making the UI as easy as possible to work with. All right, one more new product release that I found on Twitter. So somebody announcing this product, Wizzed.io, I'm assuming.
I think it's WizEd.
WizEd. Oh, yeah. Okay. So let's check this out real quick. So
I did have a look at this.
Did you see this?
I did not. I don't have a Webflow account to use it with, but it seemed like it was a really cool integration. There's a billion different build your own app things, and then Webflow is kind of the golden goose for build your own website in its particular flavor of drag and drop, not looking at code at all sort of things. And this is an integration that allows you to, on top of a website you've already designed in Webflow, to add in data from Airtable and then make stuff actionable. So they have a tutorial that shows how you can make a to-do list where you click on the checkbox button and it updates the record back in Airtable, all using stuff that is similar in appearance. You can see the UI right here. It looks pretty similar to Webflow, so it feels like an integrated experience. Yeah, really cool.
Interesting. So it's like an add-on to Webflow to allow you to pull data from Airtable.
Yeah.
And maybe other places, Stripe, Integromat.
Yeah, because right now you can bring in Airtable data to control Webflow CMS items, but it's a loose sort of integration, meaning that it's not pulling from Airtable. It's like copying Airtable data back and forth using a third-party integration. And then this is something else. Instead of controlling CMS items, I believe it is, I don't know how to describe it, but it's just another way of making an interactive website from Webflow using Airtable data.
Yeah, Very cool. So yeah, look at pricing real quick. So yeah, if you're doing sites and you want to use your data from Airtable, Webflow is obviously one of the biggest ones. There are some others we mentioned today, Softer.io, Pori.io, or some other ones that work directly with just Airtable. So they're kind of more Webflow alternatives. And so this one is kind of an integration. And there are other bridge products out there that help you get data from Airtable into Webflow. I've seen in the marketplace. I believe there's one. So yeah.
Called Noble, I think.
Yes.
Yeah. Yep. Thank you. Noble. Yeah. And so options for using Airtable, because Airtable is such an easier way. Like I think about WordPress, if you've done a lot of WordPress, and it'd be so much easier to manipulate your data in Airtable than it is to go into a WordPress backend to update your posts and things like that. So I'm sure similar approach. All right. Any final thoughts on community updates? Any other breaking news you want to share?
I don't think so.
That kind of covers our bases. So with that, we're going to move on to spotlight our primary sponsor for this show and the website Built on Air. That would be ontooair.com. It's the all-in-one toolkit to run your business in Airtable, and for power users of Airtable, it's a great secret tool to make things more efficient. And for today, I'm going to showcase some hot off the press changes that will be coming out this week in the Amplify product. And so these will be coming out this week. The big release that we're making with Amplify is documents. So we have complete integration with 4 different types of editors. We have a JSON editor. So if you are doing anything with JSON and you want a better interface for interacting with your JSON data, and you can now do that. There's multiple ways that you can interact with your JSON data. You can look at it straight code view or text view. Oops. And another cool thing that we added is the ability to go full screen on any view. So now it makes it much easier to interact with your editors in Amplify. So we have JSON, we have a markdown editor, so you can see the markdown text as well as the rendered HTML version of it. So any of your rich text fields, or you can also just use a long text field to update Markdown. This is a powerful editor for that. We also have a full HTML editor. So any HTML documents, you can now use Airtable as a full-blown documentation platform, writing your documents, writing your sales copy, writing your sales contracts, all in an HTML document. This gets stored in a long text field. So the one limitation is Airtable has a 100K size limit for long text fields. So there is a limitation on how large the document can be. And then the last one is our integration with Google Docs. So that includes Google Docs, Google Slides, and Google Sheets. We have the ability to view directly if you just simply have a link to your Google slide. So this would work great with the new Google Drive integration that will bring in all of the links. This will be a quick way where you can easily look at everything going on within your Google slide. You can make changes, and you can even download them as PowerPoint, PDF, depending on if it's a Google slide. You can also import them as an attachment and specify which the format and the field that you want to save it as an attachment, so you can be working on your Google Slides and get that going. Also a great way to just quickly navigate through lots of Google Docs. You'll see all of your files in here. These are all linked to the same, so that's not a good example. But this would update with whatever Google slide is referenced in your in your record. So very powerful, very great integration along with other updates that we've made. So check out Onto Air Amplify in the marketplace, try it out, and it will be a huge upgrade in working with your data in your Airtable bases. Now, with that, we're going to move on. And Allie's going to share with us some amazing ways to utilize scripting and other things with your base. So add your stream there.
Woo! All right, awesome. So I'm just going to do a quick demo of kind of like a little like UI hack, I guess, that I'd used a while back and I shared during one of our Open Cider calls. And I'm still using this like in every base that I make. So I thought maybe other people would like to see it as well. So essentially this is a base I made for the scripting contest last summer that came out. I figured I would just use this as an example again. It's very basic. None of this is real data, just all sample. You can see I'm being paid by Wayne Enterprises, my good friend, Bruce Wayne.
Eccentric billionaire?
Exactly. So I've just got income, expenses, vendors, and types that relate to those vendors or, companies. And then I've got these monthly, yearly, and summary tabs. And the monthly table is just linking to income and expenses in order to do some calculations, get my gross income, gross expenses, and then calculate my net income or net profit for that month. So the whole purpose of this script is I wanted to be able to kind of inspect 1 month at a time. And you can think of this like, say I could have even, used a company at a time. Like I want to see every interaction I've ever had with a company and get aggregate data about that. In this case, I'm using a month. So I want to be able to see across not just my monthly summary table, but I want to inspect each individual record on income and expenses and get some aggregate data from across all the tables in my bases. So essentially, I've written this really simple script that I'll just click this button. And all it does is you can see it just unchecked a box there, and then it rechecked the box for the month that I clicked the button for. Now I could pop open this dashboard, and all of these apps are, if I look at the settings, they're all pointed at particular views. And I've set up these views on my income and expense tables, and they're all just filtered where that checkbox is checked. So that checkbox becomes a lookup field from the monthly summary. So I've got a parent table, and then anything that's linked to it, I can move that checkbox over and filter my views based on whatever month I've chosen. And the coolest part is that, say I'm done looking at this month, like, all right, I've done March 2020, I can just click run and pick a different one, and everything goes away and repopulates. So just a couple different things. This is actually something kind of cool. I wrote a little formula that just says if the box is checked, then it's the chosen month. Otherwise, it's other months. And you can see that that just turns the one I'm trying to look at and compare to the rest of the year or the rest of all of my data a different color. And if I, yeah.
This is one of the better dashboards I've seen. It's very, very cool.
Yeah, I love this hack. I remember the day Dan and I have seen this before, like you said, and I remember being like, what on earth? It's so simple. It's such a simple little trick, and it had never occurred to me, and it might be, I think, my favorite Airtable trick of all time, because it's just, oh yeah, you just use a lookup. You use a lookup in a very, very simple script.
Thank you. You're gonna make me blush now. Oh my god.
It's great. It's just so cool.
Thank you. If anyone wants to see the script, it is very, very simple. As Camille said, it basically just looks at the view on the monthly table, selects everything on it, and unchecks the box first. So that way you make sure you only have one box checked at a time.
Mm-hmm.
So it just unchecks all the boxes, and then it checks the box for the one that you chose. And that is literally it. The only downside, one caveat I will say, is that if you are using a base with a bunch of other people, you'll step all over each other if two people are trying to look at the same thing. So you'd kind of have to, you can write in this script, you can figure out who the current user is, and then maybe point it, like if you have a different checkbox for each person, that would be one workaround. But if you're the only person looking, then it's pretty simple.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. If you really wanted to make it advanced, you could maybe have like a text field. They use like a JSON to represent each user ID of which one they're checked on, right? Something like that.
You could.
Although that probably wouldn't work with the formulas. That probably wouldn't help the formulas.
You could try, if you set the field permissions to only specific users can edit the checkbox field and set it to just you, then no one can use the script except for you.
Exactly.
And they can't manually, because you could still manually go in and check a box, but not if you have field permissions set.
Right.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Very
That's
cool.
about it.
Yeah. So definitely a useful way to you see the integration between scripting and the apps and how you can make some powerful stuff there. Very cool. Let me give our quick tease right here. Next, we're going to be going on to Camille, who's going to show us an interesting app.
Yeah. So I have this demo base that I seem to use for everything. And I wanted to give a quick rundown of the Batch Update app. Batch Update is one of the several original, I guess you could say, apps that were made by Airtable. Like all apps in the marketplace, you need a pro or enterprise account to use them. But Batch Update, in my opinion, is one of the better ones made by Airtable. It's just so useful. There's so many different things that it can do. Essentially, what it allows you to do is pick a table, and then optionally, you can pick a particular view, or you can have it run for all records in that table. And then you can update several records at once, as the name sort of suggests. So I've set up a very simple view that looks at all records that don't have anything filled in for this date returned field. I'm tracking how something was sent out on a particular date and the condition it was when it was sent out, and then the condition it was returned in, and then the date it was returned. So let's say I wanted to process all of these at once. I could go ahead and select that field, returned condition, and say set a cell value. I have a couple of different options. I could clear out the cell content, so like get rid of what's already in there. I could set a particular cell value or set cell value randomly. That I think is pretty useful if you wanted to randomly assign a collaborator field, for instance, for whoever is supposed to select a task or something like that. But in this case, I want to set all of these that they were just returned in good condition. The other action I have set up is to fill in the date returned field with the current date. There's even more options for this. I could, again, clear out the value if there's not, if there's something in there. I can set it to a specific date, or handy shortcut, set it to today. Set cell randomly. That's actually a little bit more tenuous for date fields, I'll say. And then very useful for date, and I believe you could do this with number fields and I think currency fields as well. You can increment or de-increment by. So let's say I wanted to change the date returned or date reserved, or if I had like a deadline field and I wanted to give everybody an extension on the deadline, I could say increment by 4 days, and everyone gets an additional 4 days to return something. In this case, I just want to set everything to set current date. And once I click done, that's all the actions I want to do. All I have to do is click update records. and then it will update all the records at once. This is a filtered view, so you saw everything sort of disappear. This one is kind of a holdout just until I click away, but you can see for this particular one, filled in with good and filled in with today's date, which is super handy. So if I click in there, it'll actually go away. And it'll just give you an update. 8 records were updated. I can click done, and a handy option, you can undo the action that you had just done. It's a pretty nifty feature. I would like to incorporate an undo button in some of the apps that I produce as well. It's just, I think overall, just a really good app that allows you to do many things. Another useful thing that batch update allows you to do, if you have a multi-select field or a multi-collaborator field, you can add one option to whatever is in the existing options in mass. So instead of clearing out everything, or everything has to be exactly the same set of options selected. If someone has ABC, someone has AB, someone just has A, you can add D to all 3 of those records and, without overwriting things if you so chose.
Yeah, that could come in handy.
It does come in handy. It's pretty nice. Yeah, that's a very quick rundown of a pretty simplistic use case to have for batch update. I believe it works with any field that is non-calculated. So it's not going to work with formulas or lookups or rollups because, you don't have direct control over what those records are. But all the other fields that aren't calculated, you have various different types of actions that you can do depending on the type of field it is.
Awesome. Thank you, Camille. Let me switch over. Thank you. So let's do another. We're going to stay with our Google theme for our next On-Air Spotlight. And in conjunction with our Amplify release, now that we have integration on the front end as far as viewing your Airtable bases, like I showed previously, the next step is you want to automate the creation and the population of your documents. So if you have sales documents that you want to populate with the account information, or if you have images that you want to populate, Google Slides is a great resource for that. So now this week with On-Air Functions, we are launching the ability to a deep integration with Google Documents. So there's 4 new functions that are being added this week. They are a Google Drive function, which allows you to simply, every time a new record meets your criteria, let's say every time a new project is added for a project management or a CRM, every time a new account is created, you have the ability to copy a template folder and create a copy of that for every new record that gets created. And then it'll automatically link the folder in your record so that you can reference that folder. You can also automatically create either new documents or use an existing template document to use as a template. And it'll allow you to, I'm going to use a better one. It will allow you to configure it in a bunch of different ways. So I'm going to just kind of highlight. So you can copy a blank sheet. So this is creating a new Google Sheets for each record that meets our criteria that we want to run on. So you can create a blank one. You can copy an existing one. Or what I'm going to show here is the ability to copy dynamic templates. So you can specify a field in your Airtable record. Maybe it's a type of account, and for each account type, you have a different template that you want to use. This allows you to specify that type based on, so I'm going to use this setup level. And so the setup level, it could be easy, hard, or medium, depending on the type of account that it is. And so you can specify your matching. So if it's an easy setup account, then you can pick the easy template. And this goes into your Google Drive setup, and you can find your template and find your the list that you want to use with this account, and so forth. So you can have different values. You can have a different template for each value that is in this select field. And then you can specify where you want to save that. And you have the same options on the saving. You can actually dynamically save the file based off of some condition in your record. And then lastly, you can set up dynamic templates that will create the name can be dynamic based off of your record fields, as well as you can merge your data from your record into your Google Doc or your Google Slides. And this also supports images as well. So if you have images in your attachment, those can actually get imported into your Google document. And then the last one is if you want to also save an attachment, either if it's a sheet, you can save it in an Excel file, a PDF, or a CSV. For a slide, you can save it as a PDF or as image files, individual, one per slide, and then documents you can save as PDF or Word or HTML. So a lot of functionality, the ability to dynamically create templates that get populated off of your data coming from your Airtable. And then you can view all of that using Amplify. So the combination of Amplify to view and edit your data directly, and then actions to automate creating it. It's a full power solution for interacting with your Google Docs. So extremely powerful. Check it out today at ontoair.com. With that, we'll move on to our final segment for today's show. We're going to do an industry view on education. And so, one of the powerful things about Airtable is it really has so many different use cases across all industries, across all tasks within industries. And so it's always good to see if you're in the education space and you're wondering if Airtable can help you. This is the episode for you to learn a little bit about what Airtable can do for that space. So the first place to look, Built on Air, we have Airtable guides for different industries. So check out this if you're in another industry. We have one for education that goes through how you can use Airtable in your at your school, at your university. And I know firsthand, working with a lot of companies and seeing who's using our software, there are a lot of university level, high school level using Airtable in a lot of different ways. So I know that this is a very common market for Airtable that I wanted to highlight. And so the first place to look usually is the template library. So Airtable keeps a library of templates. Now, I was surprised that they don't have a category for education within their templates. So you kind of have to search. If you search, I believe there was one that came up, search for college. There's some other. So they do have templates. They don't have a category for it. I think they should add that. But there definitely are some templates. And then usually within the university, you're likely maybe doing event planning, product catalog that could be, used for your course catalog. So there's definitely lots of templates in here that could be applicable. They just don't have them grouped for education. But if you move, the other place that you'll want to look is the universe. And the difference is the templates come directly from Airtable. So those are built by the Airtable team. The university or the universe is user generated. So these are people across the world that have built a cool base and they want to share it with you for free. So it's a great resource. You see some really, really interesting ideas and ways to learn from other people of what they've built. So check it out. This one does have an education category. And so you can click on that one and see what's going on. Or if you search for college or university or high school, you'll find more by searching. So definitely a lot of examples in here for different ways that you can use it. And this one kind of applies for both for student use cases, as well as if you work at the university or if you teach. There's a whole spectrum of different ways that you can use it. I know, having a college age student, she uses Airtable to stay on top of college and what's going on there. So it's a great, right there. There's a student planner. So if you're a college student, I'm sure, and you're familiar with Airtable, it can help you stay on track of all the stuff that you've got going on. So lastly, I was going to do a deep dive into an interesting one. And so this was one provided from a university. So thank you to them. And it basically is for candidates. So if you're in the admissions office and working through all of the candidates and you want to have a better view of, I get a sense that software that most universities and high schools use is maybe not the most sophisticated and a little bit outdated. So Airtable might be a good way to pull that data out of there and have a better way of figuring out, how you want to group people. So in this place, candidates. I liked their use case of apps. So they've got a global search, so you can search across all bases, and then they integrate with the email app to send emails. So they actually use this to send the emails to people who are accepted or not accepted. So make sure that you don't mess up and send this to the wrong view that people got rejected that didn't really, or vice versa. But you can do that. So you can submit, so you can filter by a view and send out emails to that view. So the send emails, that's a really useful app. And they've also got, it's all templatized. So this all gets populated from your base, and very, very useful to send out emails to groups of people. So they do that for both every time applicant is received, and then this one, it looks like for people that are accepted, or I guess that you've completed. So yeah, so you can set up different emails. I think you have to have a different app for each kind of email template that you set up. Useful. So you can kind of see ways that you can use this interacting with students, configuring it to just manage everything. So really, really powerful use case. Airtable is very useful, and I'm seeing more and more traction within the university setting and below, in high school as well. And so hopefully we see more of it in schools. Hopefully we see schools teaching Airtable. That would be really cool. Get people familiar. Database 101 in 5th grade, I think.
Yeah, that would be great.
Cool. Any other thoughts on that space?
I teach as well, and I definitely know, I think, fingers crossed, next spring is my first full semester course, which means I will definitely have an Airtable base set up to make sure I, dot all my I's and cross all my T's, and plan out each and every session ahead of time, just to keep track of things, because there's USC uses Blackboard, which is okay, but you have to really hunt for stuff. Like, you really have to look for the option that you want to use, and just going in with a game plan so I have the time to hunt for all those appropriate buttons to click. I'm going to do all my planning in Airtable probably.
Nice. Okay, so is that an online course or in person?
Now, I'm in California and we've opened back up. I'm pretty sure it's going to be in person. Again, cross my fingers.
Okay.
We'll see.
If you're a SC student, check out Camille Park's class. That would be awesome. You get a student coming from the Built on Air podcast.
Well, I mean, it's a planning course. So you already have to be weirdly interested in both the databases and planning, I think, to have that kind of cross section. But
great. That's awesome. Cool. Well, that wraps up this week's episode. Any final remarks? All right. Thank you for joining us. Join us again next week. Next week we still got one more in June, and then we'll be on to July. So until then, good luck with building your basis. And we always want to hear your feedback. Subscribe, join our community on builtonair.com, and we'd love to hear from you. Till then, we'll see you next time. Mm-hmm.